He disappeared for 14 months, then returned speaking a language that no one, not even the world's top linguists, could identify. And the one phrase he kept repeating, well, let's just say it's enough to make anyone uneasy. This is the story of Mark Ellison, and it's a story that defies all logical explanation. In 2009, a man named Mark Ellison vanished without a trace from his quiet suburban home. There were no signs of a struggle. His car was in the driveway, his wallet and keys were on the kitchen counter, and his front door was locked from the inside. It was as if he had simply evaporated into thin air. Local police and volunteer search teams spent weeks combing the nearby woods and questioning everyone who knew him. But they found nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a single clue. For 14 long months, Mark Ellison was just another face on a missing persons poster, his case growing colder with each passing day. His family and friends were left with a gaping hole in their lives and 1,000 unanswered questions. Had he run away? Was he the victim of a crime? No one knew. And then, just as suddenly as he had disappeared, Mark Ellison returned. 14 months after he went missing, a disoriented man walked barefoot into a police station in a neighboring town. He was thin, his hair was overgrown, and his clothes were tattered. But it was him. It was Mark Ellison. The officers were stunned. His family was overcome with relief. But their joy quickly turned to confusion and fear. Because Mark Ellison was not the same man who had disappeared. He was back, but he no longer spoke English. In fact, he didn't speak any language that anyone on Earth had ever heard before. The sounds he made were a complex series of clicks, guttural tones, and melodic phrases that baffled everyone. At first, they thought he might be suffering from some form of amnesia or a neurological condition brought on by trauma. Psychiatrists were brought in, but they ruled out aphasia or any known psychological disorder. His brain scans were completely normal. This wasn't a case of a man who had forgotten his language. It was a case of a man who had seemingly learned a new one. The police were stumped, so they called in the experts. Linguists from 12 different universities across the globe were consulted. They flew in, listened to recordings of Mark's speech, and analyzed its phonetic structure, syntax, and grammar. Their conclusion was unanimous and deeply unsettling. The language Mark spoke was not a known dialect, wasn't an obscure tribal tongue from a remote corner of the world. It wasn't a constructed language like Esperanto or Klingon. It wasn't even a pidgin or a Creole. It had a consistent and complex grammatical structure, far too intricate to be random gibberish. It was a fully formed language, but one that had no record of ever existing. It was as if it had been born from nothing. Throughout the interrogations and examinations, Mark remained calm but distant. He didn't seem to understand any of the questions asked of him in English or any other language they tried. But there was one thing he did, a single phrase in this unknown tongue that he would repeat over and over again. And every time he said it, he would perform the same strange ritual. He would stop, his eyes would widen, and he would glance nervously over his shoulder, as if he were checking for something or someone standing right behind him. This one repeated phrase became the central obsession for the linguists. They transcribed it, broke it down into its phonetic components, and ran it through every database and analytical model they had. But it was no use. The language had no relatives, no shared roots with any other linguistic family on the planet. For months, it was a complete dead end. Then, late one night, there was a breakthrough. While alone in his observation room, Mark was given a pen and a piece of paper. A routine attempt to see if he could communicate through writing. For hours, he just stared at it. But then, he began to write. He didn't write words. He drew a series of strange, intricate symbols. They looked like a chaotic jumble of curves and sharp angles. To the officers watching on the monitor, it looked like meaningless scribbling. But one young analyst, working the late shift, noticed something odd. She took a digital image of the paper and on a whim, mirrored the image horizontally. The random symbols suddenly clicked into place. They weren't symbols at all. They were a sequence of numbers and letters, distorted as if seen through a reflection. When they pieced them together, they formed a set of geographic coordinates. The team immediately ran the coordinates through their system. The location they pointed to was a remote, densely wooded area about 50 miles from Mark's home. It was a place the initial search parties had overlooked. That wasn't the most chilling discovery. When they cross-referenced the location with other cases, they found a terrifying connection. The coordinates pointed to the exact spot where 3 other men had mysteriously vanished over the past decade. Each under circumstances eerily similar to Mark's. They had all disappeared from their homes, leaving everything behind, never to be seen again. Mark wasn't the first. He was just the first to come back. But the most disturbing part of this entire story isn't what Mark said or what he wrote. It's what happened when he heard a recording of his own voice. One afternoon, in an attempt to trigger his memory, the investigators decided to play back a recording of one of his first interrogations. They wanted to see how he would react to hearing himself speak this unknown language. The moment the recording started, Mark's demeanor changed entirely. His calm, detached state shattered. He threw himself back in his chair, his eyes wide with pure terror. He clapped his hands over his ears and began to scream, but he wasn't screaming in English. He was shouting that same unknown phrase, over and over, with a desperation they had never seen before. It was as if he was hearing something in the recording that no one else could. The investigators stopped the tape immediately, but the incident left them shaken. Later that night, a forensic audio technician was tasked with cleaning up the recording, trying to isolate Mark's voice. Out of sheer curiosity, he decided to slow the audio down to half speed. And that's when he heard it. It was faint, almost imperceptible, hidden beneath the sound of Mark's own voice. It was a second voice, a whisper. It was speaking the exact same unknown language, a fraction of a second behind Mark, like a perfect, chilling echo. But this voice was different. It was lower, guttural, and it didn't sound human. It was as if, during that interrogation, something else had been in the room with them, something standing just behind Mark's shoulder, whispering into his ear. For the next 3 months, Mark was kept in a secure room at a psychiatric hospital. He was under constant observation. The room was on the 3rd floor, its windows were sealed shut, and a security guard was posted outside the door 24/7. There were no cameras inside the room itself, out of respect for his privacy. But on the morning of his 93rd day at the facility, a nurse went in to deliver his breakfast and found the room empty. Mark Ellison was gone. Again, the door was still locked from the outside. The windows were still sealed. No one on the security cameras had seen anyone enter or leave the room. He had simply vanished from inside a locked box. The only thing he left behind was a message, scratched deep into the drywall with his own fingernails. It was the same sequence of symbols he had drawn before. But this time, underneath the symbols, there were 3 words, written in shaky but clear English. It was the first and only time he ever communicated in his native language after his return. The message was a translation of the phrase he had been repeating all along. It read, "They changed the order." The FBI officially closed the Mark Ellison case, filing it under unexplained. There were no more leads, no more evidence. But the story didn't end there. The linguists who studied Mark's language never gave up. They continued to analyze the recordings, sharing their data in a small, dedicated online community. According to their most recent, unconfirmed reports, the language is still changing. New phonetic sounds and grammatical rules are appearing in the original recordings, patterns that weren't there before. It's as if the language itself is alive, evolving on its own, as if someone or something somewhere is still speaking it. So where do you think Mark Ellison went? Was he taken? Did he leave on his own? And what do you think that cryptic message, "They changed the order," really means? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching.